So this is like I said, basics of Final Cut, right? So what is Final Cut? Final Cut is it's an Apple product. So if you can't use it on a PC or any other type of computer, you have to be using a Mac product. It'll only work with that. There's a free download through Apple that you can get, but there's also some links out there where you can download it for free. But you should maybe pay the $300 to get the actual program. So it's good for like editing videos. It's not so great for creating graphics or animations or anything like that. And it's always going to give you like an MP4 file or a .movie file. So these are always going to be videos, right? And as you guys are probably have some interest in, you know, the marketing and media aspect of it, it's a great storytelling tool, right? So there's a visual part of it, there's an audio part of it, right? And that tells a lot more, you know, than maybe a photo or some text or anything like that. So, so this is basically what Final Cut looks like. By the way, I shouldn't have just assumed, but you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what Final Cut looks like. So let me go through. It's a little bit confusing when you first start because there's just so much. If you launch Final Cut, it's going to look a little different because you're not going to have all the projects and stuff that I have. This is just a screenshot that I have. But the basics are going to be the same, right? So up here is your library window, right? This is where all your assets are going to be that you want to put into your projects. This is your project viewer. So this is going to give you like a preview of what the project looks like as you're editing it. This is your adjustments panel. So this is all the things that you can make different, right? All the things that how you kind of basically do editing, right? Except for cuts and stuff. And speaking of how you do cuts and stuff, that's going to be done down here in your linear editor. So this is more or less the timeline of what your project looks like. And then this is your effects panel and your transitions panel. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. That's maybe tertiary or, you know, secondary to basic editing. We'll get into that stuff in some of the other lessons. All right, so let's jump over to Final Cut. And just upon first start, this is what we're going to get. So as that's coming up, think about as you start a new project, think about what the end product is going to be, right? So like not all videos are the exact same. You have to think about some of the dimensions, right? Like, you know, the most prevalent example that I can think of for what I use it for is, you know, videos that go on Instagram have a different dimension than you know, some of the other social media platforms like YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that. So you can adjust that, right? But you have to think about that before you start a project. And then you can also think about, I know Duke was asking me the other day about the resolution of the video and stuff like that. So how big is the file going to be when I finish it? How long does the video need to be? You got to think about that stuff before you start your video, and that'll help you set up your project file before you actually start. Can you guys think of anything else that you might need to keep in mind before you start a video? Anyone? All right, so I came up with like just the way that you're gonna edit it, right? So there's just like there are different writing styles, you know, creative versus something that's a little more formal. What was that?
I was on mute.
Oh, okay, it's all good. Like something a little more creative, something a little more, you know, document oriented. You know, you gotta think about the audio portion of it. There's just a lot, and the only way to get, you know, really good about thinking about these things before you actually start a project is just to actually start doing them, right? So let's see if Final Cut's come up. Okay, so this is what Final Cut looks like when you launch it. If you guys launched it, you're gonna not have, like I said, all this stuff that I have over here. So this is, like I said, this is more or less where your video is gonna, your timeline is gonna be, and you can kind of see that red line. That's your playhead, and as it goes, changes up here in the preview window, right? So the first thing that, like I said, you guys are starting with nothing basically in the Final Cut. So the first thing you got to think about is importing. Oh, sorry, even before then, just some basic terms right quick. A project is basically the accumulation of all of the assets that you're putting into a project, right? So a project is all the videos, all the audio, all the static images, all the graphics that you have. And the library is kind of just where you pull from those assets. So let me jump back over to Final Cut. So this is also where you find your projects up here. So this is one of my projects, but the library is down below it, and that's where like all of the photos are. So like this is just a static image, right? It's not in this project, but I can go and pull it if I need to, right? So that's the difference between a project and a library. So if you want to start a new project, you go File, New Project, right? And then let me pull this down. Okay, so naming your project, name it whatever you want to. I'll name this one Lesson 1 Example. Like I said, you got to think about your end product before you actually start it. So you can later on go ahead and adjust these things. But if I'm going to post something to, let's say, for example, Instagram, right? So the dimensions on Instagram are square, or you can do it differently. So I'm actually going to drop this down and do like custom, right? But there's a lot of different options here, right? So if you shot video on 4K, for example, you can go ahead and set that up so it's with that, right? This is just an example I'm going with. The difference between I and P is progressively scanned. So that means, just follow along with my cursor. It means it does line 1, and then line 2, and then line 3, then line 4, right? And that goes back to old broadcast television. I is interlaced, which means it does lines 1, 3, 5, 7, and then it comes back and it does 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's really no difference. That's just, like I said, that's more like a callback to old broadcast television. You might see a little difference in when the video is exported when you're done with the final video, but for the most part, there's no visible difference between I and P. Okay, so like I said, we're going to do custom, and I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say this is 1080 by 1080. Okay, and then your frame rate, that's also how it was shot. So when you shoot video, every single second has a bunch of little photos in between, right? So we actually refer to that as rate, and that's frames per second, okay? So what has it set up in this setting right here? It's actually 24 or 23.98 frames per second. So for every second of video that I have down here, there's actually 24 photos in between, right? Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so you get into like 60 frames per second, and that's really slow motion. But the standard is going to be 24 or 23.9. So we'll keep that the same. This you don't have to worry about unless you're doing like, like, have you guys seen those really cool 360 videos? Well, this is just saying that this is more or less two-dimensional. And then your rendering, you can change this later on, but all these are a little bit different, and it just affects how it exports. My default is Apple ProRes 422, and that's going to give you the smallest video size when you export, okay? But each of these have different qualities. So I don't know the difference, but this is one that I use, okay? All right, and then the same thing here with audio, different functions, but we won't get into that, okay? So now that I set up my project, hit okay. Now I got a new project, okay? So this is my timeline on my project. There's nothing in there, okay? And if you guys are starting off Final Cut for the first time, you're not gonna have anything in your library. So the first thing we gotta do is get use of assets into your library, okay? So we did that. So importing, okay? So when you import something, you're taking something that's unedited and putting it into Final Cut so you can now edit it, right? Okay, the most common types is gonna be like static photos, like JPEGs. You're also gonna have, obviously, video files. audio files, and then sometimes like project files like Photoshop or After Effects or something like that, okay? So do you guys know some most common types of video files? I've actually listed them up here. Anybody want to call them out? Okay.
MP4s.
Yeah. So video is going to be MP4 and .movie. Audio files are going to be MP3. That's the most common, but you also have like Apple, I don't even know what the file type is. You have project files, like I said, Photoshop, After Effects, and then you have like static images and stuff like that. Okay, so how do you actually import? It was really just as simple as click and dragging, right? So, or you can go to File, Import Media. So let me show you what both of those look like. Okay, so now I'm going to take File, Import Media. And it's going to bring up, you know, if you're on a Mac, this is basically what your Finder looks like, right? And you can, you know, go wherever you need to. You can go to downloads and, you know, find it there. Like this is the stuff that I was doing for Valentina yesterday with some E-Cup stuff, whatever. So this is the logo, import select. I selected that one. Now it should be down here in my library. I have so much crap in here. I'm never gonna be able to find it. Here it is. Okay, so there it is. You can't.
Question.
Yeah.
Is the breakdown of the folders like that automatically, or did you set up that way where it's like MP3 audio is going to automatically import in that, you know, bracket?
Yeah, good question. So this is, I didn't set this up. So as soon as you import it, you have to know what file type it is, and it's gonna automatically sort it out for you, okay? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, cool. All right, so as you can kind of see down here, this is the USL E-Cup logo that I just imported, okay? So I'm gonna show you, that's one way to import. Another way to import is to just go to your Finder and then take, so this is the, I think this is the logo that I imported just now. I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna do the exact same thing, use click, you can drag it actually into your timeline. So now, I mean, it's the same thing, right? So that's just two different ways of doing it. It's up here now too though. So this file, I picked a really bad example because this is black on black, but so this file right here is now in my library and I just clicked and dragged it into my timeline down here into my editor, okay? Any questions on that? Any questions on importing? Okay, so now once you kind of have all, like, you don't have to import all of your assets that you're going to use into the project all at the beginning, right? Like a lot of times actually I'll, you know, edit, you know, I'll put in, if I'm doing an interview, I'll put in all the video for the interview, edit out the video, edit out the interview, and then go back and start putting in the elements that I want to go with that, right? So you don't necessarily have to do it all in one step, okay? So thinking about the type of components that you need to put into your video, we talked about this a little bit earlier, the two types of elements are going to basically be broken down into two different types. You have an audio component and a video component or a visual component, right? So that leads into our next thing. This doesn't really fit in there, but just as you're going along, you can always Control Z or edit undo. So let's go, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, that's okay though. So I just put in this video and let's say I make an edit point and I delete out this half of it, right? You can always Control Z or Command Z and that's gonna undo, right? And then you can keep going backwards, Command Z, and you can also do File, Redo. So this is me going steps forward and steps backwards, right? So just keep that in mind as you go along. You can always undo, but you know, keep in mind if you can't go all the way back to something that you want previously and then kind of restart, you're gonna have to just undo from the point that you're at, okay? All right, so this is your visual components that we're gonna look at first. So we'll worry about the audio later just for this first lesson. Let's just focus on the visual part, the video part. So this should look familiar. This is like the linear editor that I took a screenshot of. And you can see that this works in layers, right? So you have, let me go back. You have your first basic layer here that's gonna be in this dark area. And then you can kind of start to add stuff to it. So let me go back to that logo that we had for USL eCup. And this is a PNG. And I should have gone over this, but you have to know your file types, right? So PNG files have transparent pixels. That's why I can see through some of these, I can see through the logo, right? But if I put a JPEG in here, it's gonna be like it's gonna basically take up the whole, I don't have a logo or anything, but you can see how there's no transparent pixels in this, right? Opposed to this one where you can kind of see through the logo, okay? So that's a PNG versus a JPEG. But working on this concept, now we have layers, right? So I have one layer right here. I can put in another layer down below it. And let me move it around a little bit. All right, you see how we're working now? So now it's this layer on top, this layer in the middle, and then this layer on the bottom, right? So it more or less works like a sandwich like that, okay? You're always gonna see the things that are on top of your timeline here, okay? So if I flip these, you know, watch what happens up here. So if I flip these, okay, now the square is on top and the logo is down below it, right? Okay, so it just works like layers. That's the basic concept to get you know, a grasp on. Oops. Okay, so for this example, I went through and I just labeled these. So this is like a text layer, and this is like a static image layer. This is a video layer, and this is a transition, which is not a layer, but it, you know, is an effect that you put on the layer. And then ultimately, hold on, let me go through this right quick. I'll come back to you. So ultimately, we get something that looks like this. So this is our text layer. You know, we see the text on top. We see the video down below it of, you know, Ray down here. That's that same video. And then there's a couple of layers of text. So there's this big Ortiz, and then there's smaller midfielder, and then the static image is kind of down below it, right? What's going on, Duke?
I don't know. It might be pointless, but can you layer video on video? Would they have to save the file some way different? Since one you have to do PNG and one's JPEG in terms of the transparency.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be possible to do transparent video, would it? Or would that be something green screen type of deal?
No, that's very much so possible. So I don't know if I can say this definitively, but I don't think there's a way in Final Cut you can export as transparent video pixels, but in After Effects you can. So there's technically, when you look at a like this logo, right? This is a PNG. So there's clear pixels that I was talking about. It's actually called an alpha channel. So colors are assigned a value, right? That's like so let me go in here to my color board, and it's like, have you ever heard of like hex codes and stuff?
Yeah, where you like it's 3 numbers and then you have to put in like the value of the actual digit for the code.
Yeah, it's actually 6 numbers, but you're correct.
Yeah.
So that's on like a spectrum, like you see down here in the color board, of all letters and number values, right? Alpha channel works off of a different spectrum. So there's no value here, right? And that's why you're able to see through it, okay? So yes, to answer your question, you can have video with that alpha channel, and it's gonna be see-through, okay?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Cool. I can show you later on, I can show you in Final Cut how to do that. But yeah, so for right now, just the basic level, if you want something transparent, do it as a PNG. That way you can see through it. All right, let's keep moving along. Any other questions? Remember anybody else? All right, cool. So making a cut. So basically now you have your videos and your JPEGs into Final Cut. You want to start editing those elements, right? You want to, and a lot of that has to do with like timing and stuff. Okay, so there's two different ways to do a cut. The first thing you can do is you can select that element and you can move the playhead, which is like little white line, to where you want to cut. And then you use Command B, okay? So let me show you what that looks like. Let me get some video in here. Give me 1 second. All right. Let me get something a little bit longer. Okay. So this is our video. You can see how it goes as I move my playhead or whatever. Okay, so let's say I'm editing. I want to make a cut right here, right as it touches the back of the net. Okay, so what I can do is basically I'm going along. I need to put my playhead right where I need that cut to be. Now I hit Command B. Okay, you see what happened down here? Is it made a cut? Okay, so now I can, if I don't want this part, I can delete it out. Or if I need to put something in between there, now I can do that. I'm just clicking and dragging. Okay. So that's making a cut. The other way you can do it is, you guys see what my cursor looks like right now. It's just that little kind of normal looking arrow, right? I can hit the B button and that's going to turn it into a blade. So now basically anywhere I click, it's going to make a cut. So if I need a cut right here, bang, now I made a cut, okay? And the same with all this. Let me go back to what I was doing before. I just hit A, and that gets me my normal playhead back. You have to make sure when I'm doing cuts like this, you have to make sure you're selected. So you see how I have that yellow outline? I'm selected now, put my playhead where I need the cut, and now I cut, right? So the difference being, it is like I have these stacked elements over here, right? If I just put my playhead where I need it and I don't select anything and hit B, it's gonna cut down here on the main timeline. Okay, so dang, we're down to 10 minutes already. Okay, so now I made a cut on here, but I actually want the cut up here. So we Command Z and select it, and now I'll make a cut. Okay. I can delete it.
Command B?
Command B, yep. So that's what I use, Command B, and then do whatever you need to. And then you can also see that you have these little playheads, like this, the cursor changes when I get, near the edge of these clips. I can select that, I'm just clicking it, and I drag it out, and now it's gonna go to the maximum length of the clip, okay? So I'm just dragging it to wherever I need. I can do that. So it's, I want to drag it in. What is that? 1 second or whatever that is, and I can do that. Okay, so those are different ways you can do cuts. We're down to like 10 minutes-ish. So I'm going to try to keep moving along so we can get at least through this first lesson. So that's how you can also adjust a cut, is to go back and, okay, I need this clip to move out a little bit longer. I can go to the end of this clip and I can, and I can move it out. Okay, so that's how you can adjust the clip. And you can also see that these are, my yellow line is almost like a little snap function, right? So as soon as I get close to a cut, it's gonna kind of jump to that. You can turn that off if you want to by hitting the end button. Let's see. So I don't exactly know where that is as far as, all right, so in view and modify, where's that at? View snapping, that's gonna turn that on and off, okay? So snapping basically goes, it's if you wanna get precisely to that little yellow line right to the edge. So if I need to drag this out and make it exactly as long as this clip, that's snapping, right? Or I can turn it off and I can just eyeball it and then it'll put it wherever I want to. that make sense? Cool. All right, so that's editing a cut, a basic cut, right? Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. Snapping, you can turn that on and off with Command M or go down to snapping, okay? Let's see here. We won't worry about that one right now. Okay, yeah, okay. So this is, we will do this one because this is like kind of the last little bit of this basic elements. Okay, so positioning, right? So I think Duke was talking about what if you want to put video over top of video. So if I put this video on top of this video, I'm only going to be able to see one video, right? Like they're both here on that same layer, but one's covering the other one up. So I actually want both videos to be superimposed on top of each other. So what I can do is I can adjust the position, right? And this might help you conceptualize the layering aspect of it. Okay, so this is basically my canvas. This is what my video's dimension is going to be. Let's say I want one of these video elements on top and the other one to be on the bottom, okay? So let me select this top video and I'm gonna move it down. I'm gonna go over here to my adjustments panel, and all I'm gonna do is where it says position X and Y coordinates, like you guys remember the callback to like charts and graphs and stuff like that. So this works exactly like that. My starting position in the middle of the screen is 0, 0, and I can make it go up or left and right by adjusting that, okay? So let me get just this Y, put it all the way to the top of the screen. Select this other one, put it down to the bottom of the screen. And there we go. Now I have two videos playing at the same time. You guys see that?
James.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out that whatever you put on top always overrides the main strip. So say you guys are doing an interview or you're doing a workout, and you have the main video, which is the stadium one in the regular main channel. If you want to add a picture, if you're like, so-and-so, this is a picture of me back in the day, you can put a picture on top of the video. And that's important to know because whatever you guys want to put on top overrides, like he's saying, the main thing. So
Yep.
You add pictures, add videos, whatever throughout the thing, you can add a picture on top of the video. You can just slide it, adjust it, put it into the right corner if you want to, do whatever, but whatever is on top will always override the main strip. So just a little info to know.
Yep. So we work on, that's exactly right, Hugh. So like I just put this little crown logo on top, like Hugh saying that's going to override. That's going to be what's on top because it works in layers, right? I can actually move this down below and you can see how it adjusts. Now it's in that middle layer. It's in between the two videos, right? So yeah, and then, you can adjust the position and stuff like that. So.
This may be a silly question. Does it have to be a certain type of file to go on top of the video there, like the PNG? Is that what you guys are kind of talking about?
Nope, it can be any file type you want. So these are all the file types that we went over earlier. It can be it can be a movie file, it can be a
PNG. It doesn't matter. Like that badge, that soccer thing, like the background is black, but that doesn't show up. It only shows up as the part that's overlaying it.
Correct. So it's actually not black. It looks black because that's just the default in the previewer up here.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what I was talking about with Duke, is that's actually an alpha channel, so it's clear.
So the fact that it's a PNG.
Yes.
Gives it the, okay, now I understand what you guys are talking about.
Yep. So like this one is a PNG, but those are all white pixels, and this is a PNG with those are clear. So that's actually a good example, Nate. So,
if it was a JPEG though, it wouldn't show clear. It would show the whole thing just on top of it, and it would look.
Nate.
Yo.
If that happens, right, you could put a JPEG or somewhere, the background, see how it's overriding everything right there.
Yeah.
If you click on that badge itself and then go into the right corner where it says blend mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see
that. See how it says normal.
Yeah.
You can change the blend mode to lighten and the whole logo itself. Well, you can just adjust. I usually use lighten, but whatever you want to use, you can adjust it there. Sometimes it takes the background out. It does different things, but that's another way If you don't have the right JPEG, you can just go on the side and choose one of those filters, and it'll adjust for you based
Alright.
off and take away the background.
Word.
Yeah. So Hugh's, we'll get into that in a different lesson, but yeah, Hugh's on the right track right there. So, and you can also do different stuff. So let me go put this back to normal, and just the other, like, you guys know what opacity is? This opacity function up here, it's basically how like transparent the image is, right? So now you can kind of see it fading out and fading in. So we call that in video production, we call that superimposition. So this image is superimposed on top of that video, okay? So that kind of goes back to, it's not necessarily the same thing as what I was talking about with the transparent pixels, because this is something you can adjust in Final Cut. But it does give you a sense of like, you can adjust how the pixels are kind of,
Heads up, I think we're less than a minute. So
yeah. Okay. So let me get to the assignment. We're basically through that first lesson. Okay. Everything that I wanted to get to, I think we're through. The first assignment I want you guys to work on at home is try to do a 30-second video, right? So try to have at least 3 cuts. Try to make it a square ratio. We went over that, how to do that. And try to have one superimposed element. So try to find a PNG or a JPEG and then put it on top of those videos, okay? And then make it exactly 30 seconds long. See if you can edit it exactly 30 seconds. And don't worry about the audio for that, okay? So see if you guys can do this assignment. If you have any questions, let me know. Any other questions? We have less than a minute. Feel free to message me. If not, appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on Thursday, okay?
All right, James. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah.
now, James.
Thanks.